Hello, everybody. Very excited that today we have Rachael Bolton, Director of People for Nobu Hotel London Portman Square. Let's get straight into it. Rachael, tell us a little bit about the hotel, the history and the setup that you've got there.
Nobu Hotel Portman Square, previously a Radisson, owned by L&R Hotels. We started demolition in April 2019 of what was the Radisson, which happened very quickly, and then have built an absolutely incredible property. David Collins Studios have done all of our interior design, which looks fantastic. 249 beautiful bedrooms, very Japanese, obviously, inspired, very minimal, and a 250 capacity restaurant, Nobu restaurant, and then 85 capacity bar and a large terrace for Nobu, and then a beautiful lounge bar and restaurant in the main hotel. And then we have a very big meeting and event space, so a ballroom that can do 450 for a seated banquet. And actually meetings and events is really taking off. We did a big bar mitzvah this weekend, our first bar mitzvah. We did our first wedding last weekend, which is fantastic. Lots of good private dining options as well. And we really as well been focused on the technology in our rooms, our meeting and event space as well, trying to get that junket business. So the film premieres, when they go around and do their trawl round of interviews, so literally a broadcast van can park outside and plug into the wall, and it's all good to go, and really bespoke events happening, and private dining within Nobu restaurant as well. I guess our biggest selling point being that our function space, so you can do a 450 seated banquet, which will be entirely Nobu food, which is not something that Nobu does on a wider, not something they do in lots of their hotels, but is something that is proving incredibly popular for us. Everybody just wants a full Nobu banquet, and that has its own issues. So we're currently, we have a full Nobu kitchen team, including a full sushi team. We're now building our meeting and events kitchen team, including a sushi team as well, because, you know, doing black cod or doing sushi for 250 people is a bit different when you've suddenly got to add on 450 in total. We have currently 300 staff. Ideally, we'd have about 420 with all bedrooms open. We've only got one tower open at present. The second tower opens in a couple of weeks. We're just in the final test sleep stages. Every room has to be slept in 3 times before we sell it to a guest, which sounds terribly glamorous, but when you do the first snag test sleep, it's not always perfect. Last time when we did the East Tower, we got the management team to do it. This time we've opened up the West Tower to all employees, and actually that's proving really popular. They're all clamoring to stay in, even though we keep telling them not everything might work, but they love it, and they fill in the feedback forms, and it means as much as we can that every employee has had an opportunity to stay within the hotel, because we've got 120 rooms in that tower. We've got to do 360 sleeps in there, so it means that we can get everyone through, which is great. They all love that. We try and keep a relatively flat structure in the hotel. L&R, our ownership, is a small family-run company, despite the fact that we are now one of the largest privately owned hotel management companies, with over 100 properties globally. But we are a fairly small family run, and a very small corporate structure, and so we try not to have an excessive structure within the business. Our GM would always introduces himself on induction. In fact, we had induction this morning, introduces himself as the least important person in the building, and I think would say that we operate on that, you know, that inverted triangle system, whereby he's there just to facilitate that everything else happens. So we have an executive team of 6 looking after sales and marketing, finance, operations, revenue, and people, and then heads of department below that. But we try as much as possible not to do anything in a hierarchical fashion. There isn't a large approval process. That's also mirrored by the corporate office being so relatively small. We are going directly to the person who can make the decisions. And Nobu runs on a very similar structure as well, with a very small corporate team supporting, and again, family run. I mean, you know, Nobu is at the head of Nobu still, and hopefully for a lot longer, and incredibly involved. He approves every sushi chef that is employed in the building, and will be here relatively soon. We hope. He hasn't traveled because of COVID, but is back traveling again. He generally travels 270 days a year, which for a man in his 70s is pretty impressive. And first thing he does, I think, probably underpins a large amount of our culture within the building. The first thing he does is arrive in the hotel, changes into his whites, which we keep here for him, and goes not into the kitchen, but into stewarding, and does an hour in pot wash with the stewarding team, and then goes in the kitchen and works with the chefs. And then
that's amazing.
Yeah, that's what he does. It's the way he's always done it, is that's how it works. And I don't think there's a single person at a senior level in Nobu who hasn't started, you know, in the most junior position and progressed. And that's a lovely opportunity for everybody. And I think something we're trying to promote, that a little bit of a struggle in terms of the fact that we've had a lot of employees now who've been employed for a year or more, but only actually worked for a short period of time, but are keen to progress and keen to move to that next level. We need to see a little bit more, perhaps, of them delivering, but trying very much to keep them engaged and help progress moving forward. In terms of the technology, what we wanted to do was reflect the fact that we have a young workforce, and that for them, communication primarily happens on their phones. They want it to be easy, they want it to be instant, and they want everything to be connected. And we wanted very much to provide a system to them that was literally go to one place and everything that you need is there. And a system that was driven by them and not necessarily driven by us from a communication perspective. And I think if you were to look through our newsfeed on Yapster, the bulk of it is coming from our team members out to the business rather than us directing information to them. We wanted it to be completely interactive, and we knew that if we were going to have a communications platform that they would engage in, that we had to have everything else sitting on that platform as well, so that it's very simple for them to be able to go to one place and find every single piece of information that they need. And coupled, I think, we decided to do away with traditional appraisal systems, and we worked together with Open Blend, which is a much more holistic, year-round way of performance managing, assessing employees, allowing them to dictate to us what's important to them.
What are some of the practical things that Open Blend allows you to monitor, improve?
It allows us to manage engagement. So we ask employees how happy they are, how confident they feel, and their ability to manage stress. So those are 3 well-being questions that are on there. They score themselves from 1 to 10. And employees can go in at any point and update that and say, actually, my ability to manage stress has suddenly dropped down to 5. And an alert will go to their line manager, which means you can instantly see that something's happened, and you can sit down with your employee and say, just want to touch base with you. I can see that your ability to manage stress has gone way down. Has something happened that we need to be aware of? Do you want to have a conversation with us? And they have, everybody has to set 8 blends, which are the 8 key drivers for them. And there is a 28 blends that they choose from. You can pick 8 personal blends. It can be time with your family, exercise, or health and fitness, all of those things, or it could be work related, or it could be a mixture of the two. And you have to define what it means to you. So contributing at work, that means different things to different people, and it's driven by the individual. They define what it is, and then they say, if it was ideal, it would be X score, and this is where I am at the moment. And then you can help them bridge that gap. And again, at any point, anyone can go in and adjust their scores, and you can sit down with your manager as regularly as you want to do an open blend conversation. It's very driven by the employee. So it provides a very holistic way of looking at what's important to an employee. And I think helps them understand that for us, we understand. It used to be years ago that in hotels, we would have signs above the door when you went into the guest area that said, you know, a bit like Disney, smile, you're on stage, or, you know, forget what's going on at home. Well, you can't forget what's going on at home. It's not realistic. Everybody has things that impact. And it might be that people have a series of personal related goals and priorities that they want to reach, that they don't want to talk to us about the detail of it, and that's absolutely fine. They just need us to be aware that time with my family is important, or that suddenly something's gone wrong. I don't want to talk to you about the detail of it, but I want you to understand there's something else going on. And that allows us to say, okay, what do you need from us? Do you need a bit more time off? Do you need to flex your working hours at the moment? What can we do to help you? And the fact that it's driven by each of us as an individual, we book the meetings in with our bosses. We can pop down what the talking points are we want in that meeting, say, I'd like to have a chat about this or not about that, is an excellent tool, and does away with the annual appraisal where you sit down every 6 months and say, oh, Rob, you did this thing in January. I know it's July now, but I just wanted to go back on it, because it's way too late then and nobody cares anymore. And that becomes a tick box exercise. That's hard to say.
Rachel, where did all this come from? Because I mean, I think what you've done is remarkable, and I see in numbers the impact of it, right? Like your engagement, communication, network health numbers are off the charts. So it is truly remarkable by any standard. My suspicion is people will watch this and they'll think, well, it's all right for Rachel. She works for bloody Nobu. Like, you know, she probably has got access to whatever she wants to deliver the vision. One, where did the vision come from? And two, is it true that you have to be leading people for Nobu in order to be able to affect the change that you've managed to implement?
No, I think anybody could do it. I think when we very first started out, sitting there deciding what the vision would be, one of the wonderful things about doing an opening is you're not bringing any baggage with you. You're not bringing any of this is how it has to be because you're working for a big brand or you're working for an existing property. You can just recreate everything, which is fantastic. Nobu values are family is one of our core values, and kokoro, which means from the heart. So it's really about making sure that it's personal and that it's about hospitality. And I have to give kudos to Josh Light, who was my head of L&D, he'll kill me for that, my head of people and culture at the time, who's possibly far more creative than I am, who initially introduced Yapster. And then once we started rolling with that, and we have fantastic owners who are very, very interested in technology and very keen on us harnessing tech in whatever way we can in order to develop things and in order to make things work better. And despite the fact that not a lot of hotels were using Yapster, that nobody else was using Open Blend, allowed us to take that risk, I guess, and say, listen, this is what we think we need to do. At the very core of what we want to do is provide a wonderful working environment for our team to understand their whole life impacts their working life, to be able to deliver a really holistic approach to employment and that employment journey for them, and to make it as seamless as possible. That means they have the ability all of us, when we walk in the door, to be as equipped as we can be, to feel as involved as we can be, and as involved as we want to be. You know, one of the big selling points for Yapster for us was the ability for employees to switch it off, which sounds counterintuitive, but the ability for employees to disconnect from the communication is so important for mental health and for keeping them interested and engaged, is to be able to walk away and for us to say, when you're not here, don't think about it. Please don't think about it. We don't want you worrying. We don't want you looking at it thinking, oh my God, if I have to read another newsfeed post from Rachael about something or other that I don't really care about, I'm not going to pay any attention to it. Whereas when you say to people, switch off when you're not here, we don't want you looking at it, it's really powerful in making them want to. And actually, very few of them set parameters just for when they're working. We do encourage people to switch off when they're on holiday. And in fact, I had a week off in July, the first time for a long time, given COVID and all the joy that was. And I switched Yapster off, which for me initially felt, you know, I got the shakes and that, oh my God, I'm not connected. But I'm very confident in my team, and I'm very confident in all of the employees in the hotel and their passion. But to be able to disconnect and then come back and choose how much you want to know about what happened when you went away, which sometimes in my role is ignorance is bliss occasionally, I think it's a very powerful tool for all of them. And the fact that they drive a large amount of that communication is critical.
Are there any areas that you're particularly proud of or interested in that you'd like us, that you'd really like the sort of wider hospitality professional community to be aware of in terms of what you're doing personally or Nobu collectively?
I honestly do think it's the tech we've got that is making everything work so much better. I really do think that has just changed things and made us all constantly contactable, which is wonderful and, you know, frustrating at times. But I think the fact that I do think that's the biggest thing for us, because traditionally my function is a Monday to Friday function, although obviously at a senior level and all of my team, actually, we would generally be available if there were, I guess traditionally you'd be available if there were an emergency or an employee had an urgent issue they wanted you to deal with. The fact that Yapster allows them to contact us all the time, and we do generally as a team, I try and avoid my entire team responding all the time because I would like them to have a little bit of work-life balance. But the fact that we do respond to them on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday morning, I think is really making them think, wow, okay, it's not that them and us in terms of the support departments working Monday to Friday, and then, you know, on traditionally what are the busiest days of the week in hotels, we will go home on a Friday night and say, thanks very much, over to you. The fact that we are available to them, all of us, all of the time, and we've introduced a series of HR lates within the building. So we keep the office open late one night a week, and then we do a very early start one day a week as well, which I think feeds off the back of that Yapster piece and the fact that they are used to being able to get hold of us whenever they want.
So are you actually, because that was what I was going to ask actually, if that is healthy and sustainable in the long term, because I know that you've really stepped up, but actually you think that people's services are going to move more onto like a sort of a shift pattern because the need to genuinely provide consistent, reliable services to employees in this new like employee-centric market is that going to be one of the main shifts? Because that is a killer takeaway. I
think the fact that, you know, listen, over the last 18 months, there's been so much uncertainty for everybody. I think that's something we've had to really take into account, is that we have got either our returning workforce, and bearing in mind that we kept on everybody. Obviously, we opened in December last year, did a massive recruitment drive in November. And at that point, we were the only 5-star new opening in the market. You know, it was like a perfect storm for us. And we recruited loads of people. brought them on board with great fanfare in November, and then closed 6 weeks later. So we had a group of people who'd been on board, some of them already a year from when we'd been planning on opening in July, and then a brand new group of people who'd only been on board for 6 weeks. And we tried to immerse them in the culture, but there was so much technical skills training to be doing, particularly within the Nobu restaurant brand and Nobu specific. So typical training for a waiter, or not even a waiter, a runner in Nobu is 6 weeks. It's a very complex menu to learn and skill set to have. So they'd had all of that. We brought them on board, and then we sent them all away, and they'd barely got to know anybody. They'd barely settled in or learnt their way around the building. And so the fact that we were able to keep in contact with them all of that time through that, whatever that was, the 10th lockdown, it felt like, and therefore kind of keep instilling our ethos and our culture with them within that, and then bringing them back and being conscious that there was huge amount of nervousness amongst people when they came back. You know, we did the terrace only opening in April, so brought half the team back, and then the rest of the people back for May. And because nobody knew when everything was going to open, it was quite short notice for lots of people, and lots of them had gone home. So the fact that they could easily conversationally contact us, rather than that formality of emailing, say, my role, and the way that people perhaps traditionally have thought of my role, the fact that it's almost the equivalent of just sending, you know, me a WhatsApp and going, "Hi Rachel, any update on what's going on?" I think made them feel more comfortable and more part of a team that they had only been part of for 6 weeks before they went off. And then there is this real nervousness of everybody coming back. How long is it going to last? Is it going to be okay? Are we going to be back for 6 months, a year? Are we going to be back for 6 weeks and then off we have to go again? Because are we going to lock down again? And so we've noticed there's a lot more need for reassurance and a lot more need for input from us, not just into their working environment, huge amounts of help with employees, with accommodation, with coming back to the UK, and all of that kind of soft stuff that they need from all of us. And they don't want to have to think, I need to go down and see HR between 8 and 6 Monday to Friday, because otherwise I can't get anyone to speak to. And conscious we have quite a large night team working, who everybody does a breakfast every now and again for a night team, or you try and keep them involved. So what we've done is started doing 7 o'clock in the morning 1 day a week, and we keep the office open till 10 1 day a week, kind of opposite ends. And the amount of people who come down is phenomenal. I have to say my team are fantastic, and there's generally someone in the office from 8 a.m. every morning, and normally till at least 6:30, 7 o'clock anyway. But for them to know that they can come down late one night a week, and we've tried to make sure that we do at least one weekend a week, if not more, that there's one weekend a month, sorry, not a week, that there's one of us here to try and provide a lot more contact, and being able to check in with them regularly on Yapster. We've seen a real rise this year of, particularly in the last few months actually, sadly, of employees whose parents have been taken ill, and sadly quite a lot of ill health and bereavement within our teams. And just being able to check in with them every day, and it takes, you know, I tend to do it on the bus in the morning, you know, a quick, okay, who's off, who do I need to speak to, just check in with them, a little thing from them that lets them know we're thinking about them, be it in the evening or the weekends, just goes a massive way to them feeling that we understand more about the wider aspect of their lives, not just that period of time when they're at work, and once they leave the building, we don't care about them, which is absolutely not the case. And just having all of these comms tools allows us to reinforce that to them, I think, on a constant basis.
Rachel, you have, as far as I can tell, at least in our customers, you've pioneered this idea of making the people team available to your folks at times and in places, both digitally and physically, that's convenient to them. Do you know to what extent that has been mirrored by other organisations in your people network? And do you think that is this here to stay now?
I
Like
think
the people team working weekends and lates occasionally on shifts?
I'm sure it's something I've always done, actually, in other places I've operated. So I think lots of people teams do it. Listen, we're a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, 365 days a year operation, and guest facing and intense, and it's stressful for our teams. All of us have a relatively young workforce who perhaps don't necessarily have the life experience sometimes to deal with what they need to be dealing with. Particularly in the luxury lifestyle market, we have very demanding guests who expect everything, yesterday. And I think certainly a lot of my peers within the industry, we are aware that we need to be available. We can't just be Monday to Friday. That's not fair. And operationally, it doesn't make any sense to leave your people during the busiest period of the week on their own is a very back to front way of working. Mondays and Tuesdays traditionally were quieter days in hotels, although we are all finding now Mondays are getting much busier, and Tuesdays there doesn't seem to be a quieter day at the moment. But traditionally, we'd all be here running around, and then suddenly come Saturday night when you're packed and you've got everything kicking off, it's, oh, well, get on with it yourselves. And there's a young duty manager trying to hold everything together. And if they're lucky, one of us is on the end of the phone. I think those days are long gone. And a greater understanding of the mental health issues that employees have, and the need for us to provide an environment that allows them to have good mental health all of the time, and provide that support to them, and move away from that traditional. It used to be that you just have to get on with it, that terribly inappropriate man up and just well, in my day, well, in my day it was atrocious, and I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And so now we are understanding, and we are able to provide the support, and because we are able to do that, we should be doing it on a regular basis. And I think it will continue, whether or not we decide to move the office to being open 7 days a week on a shift basis. It is another matter. If there was the appetite for it from the employees, then absolutely that's what we would do, if that's what's needed.
It'd be interesting. Do you see significant differences between different sections of the hospitality sector in terms of this level of responsiveness to the needs of the employees from the people team? Like, is there any difference in luxury hotels versus other segments of the hotel market versus, say, casual dining? Because it's interesting you say you've really offered this level of support most of your career, because I don't think that is necessarily the case for the whole of the wider hospitality sector.
No, I don't think it is. I think probably in the luxury market, yes. In the luxury market, certainly you would traditionally have executives on duty over the weekend to provide that additional support. I think compared to casual dining, obviously they're very busy, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and I spent 1.5 years in the casual dining market, and we were certainly available on the telephone. But when you're only doing F&B as opposed to doing F&B and rooms, the number of issues that can arise are halved, as it were. We've got, a very large events business. We've got obviously a large rooms business and large F&B. So there's much more things that can go wrong, I guess, far more issues for our employees to have to deal with, which means a need for more specialists, but more people to be available to them to speak to. I worked for Holiday Inn for quite a long time. Again, less issues because there's less service being provided to the customers. As soon as you start delivering that luxury level of service, and particularly us where we're trying to straddle that luxury lifestyle branding, where you are doing whatever it is that a guest needs, then they need more of the support, and they need that to be available all of the time to them in order to, we want everybody to be empowered. They need to feel able to deal with the issues themselves, and indeed they are, and they just get on with it and tell us, and that's fantastic, and we support them. Occasionally a little conversation about why that was decided, but otherwise full support to them. Yeah, that's the way it is. I find actually employees probably temper their responses far more than we would if we gave them a list of this is what you need to do. But I think there is a difference, and I think luxury lifestyle or luxury hotels, there probably is that more continuous support, and it is because of the requirements of the guests and the price point. You know, you've got guests paying £1,000, £2,000 a night. There isn't any way of, you know, there is no understanding of, well, I can't make a decision on that today. I need to wait till my boss gets back. It just has to be done, and they have to feel supported, and that only works if we're available to them.